The observation deck of Nexus Station stretched before Zektar like a curved glass cathedral, offering a perfect view of the Kepler 442 system's fourth planet. The planet below glowed amber and blue in the light of its twin suns, its surface dotted with the geometric patterns of human settlements. What should have been a routine survey mission was about to become something that would haunt the High Observer for the rest of his considerable lifespan. Zektar's 4 arms worked simultaneously across multiple control interfaces, his chitinous exoskeleton gleaming under the station's artificial lighting. As a member of the Kethmori species, he possessed a natural aptitude for pattern recognition and strategic analysis that had earned him his position on the Galactic Council. His people had been observing and cataloging galactic conflicts for over 2,000 years, maintaining strict neutrality while gathering data on the various species' military capabilities. The humans were relatively new to the galactic stage, having achieved faster-than-light travel only 43 years earlier. Their expansion had been rapid but cautious, establishing colonies on 12 worlds and maintaining peaceful relations with most neighboring species. The Galactic Council had classified them as Category C, moderate threat, based on their technological capabilities and observed behavior patterns. That classification was about to be proven catastrophically wrong. High Observer, came the voice of his aide, Velnash, through the communication implant behind Zektar's primary auditory organ. We're receiving multiple hyperspace signatures entering the outer system. Configuration suggests destroyer fleet formation. Zektar's compound eyes shifted focus to the holographic display materializing beside him. Red dots appeared at the edge of the system map, dozens of them, moving in the distinctive pattern that marked a destroyer fleet advance. His internal temperature dropped several degrees as he recognized the tactical formation. The destroyers were one of the galaxy's most feared military forces, a collection of species united under a single purpose: the complete annihilation of worlds they deemed contaminated by what they called inferior genetics. Scan composition and numbers, Zektar commanded, his translator converting his clicking speech patterns into standard galactic common. The results appeared seconds later, and Zektar felt his breathing spiracles constrict in shock. 47 capital ships, each one capable of reducing a planet's surface to molten slag. Hundreds of support vessels and fighter craft. By conservative estimates, the fleet carried enough firepower to sterilize a dozen worlds. Sir, Velnash's voice carried the tremor of fear that all civilized species felt when confronting the destroyers. The human planet below, it's completely undefended. Their orbital defenses consist of 3 asteroid mining platforms and a communications relay. The largest ship in their system is a cargo hauler. Zektar studied the tactical display with growing unease. The humans had established Kepler 442d as an agricultural colony, its population consisting primarily of farming families and the support infrastructure needed to feed the growing human colonies throughout the sector. According to the most recent census data, approximately 50,000 humans called this world home. By any reasonable military analysis, they were about to witness a massacre. Are there any human military vessels in the system? Zektar asked, though he already suspected the answer. Negative, High Observer. However, we are detecting some unusual activity on the planet's surface. Multiple energy signatures are appearing across the continents, and there's been a significant increase in electromagnetic transmissions. The main display shifted to show the planet in real time, enhanced by Nexus Station's advanced sensor array. Zektar could see the human settlements clearly now, clusters of buildings surrounded by vast agricultural fields. But something was indeed changing. Lights were appearing in patterns across the landmasses, and he could detect the movement of vehicles converging on central locations. Sir, Velnash interrupted again, we're receiving a transmission from the human colony. It's being broadcast on all frequencies in multiple languages. Display it, Zektar ordered. A holographic projection materialized in the center of the observation deck, showing a human female with graying hair and weathered features. She stood in what appeared to be a command center, with other humans working frantically at control stations behind her. When she spoke, her voice carried a calmness that seemed utterly at odds with the approaching annihilation. This is Governor Sarah Martinez of Kepler 442d colony to all vessels in the system. We are aware of the approaching destroyer fleet. To any neutral observers in the area, please record what you witness here today for the Galactic Council archives. What you're about to see is why you never corner a human. The transmission ended, leaving Zektar staring at the empty hologram projection in confusion. The governor's words made no sense in the context of the approaching fleet. What exactly did the humans think they were going to accomplish against such overwhelming odds? The answer began to reveal itself as the sensor array picked up more detailed readings from the planet's surface. The energy signatures Velnash had detected were indeed significant, but their nature was puzzling. Instead of weapons charging or defensive systems coming online, the readings suggested industrial machinery operating at maximum capacity. Factories that had been producing agricultural equipment were now producing something else entirely. High Observer, Velnash's voice carried a note of disbelief. The humans appear to be manufacturing weapons on the surface. Crude projectile launchers, chemical explosives, and, sir, they're turning their agricultural machinery into weapons platforms. Zektar leaned forward in his observation chair, all four arms working to refine the sensor focus. The image that emerged was unlike anything in his extensive database of military preparations. Across the planet's surface, humans were indeed converting farming equipment into weapons. Crop harvesters were being fitted with missile launchers. Irrigation systems were being modified to deliver chemical agents. Even the massive terraforming engines used to maintain the planet's atmosphere were being reconfigured for purposes that made Zektar's analytical mind race with possibilities. But, most striking of all was the complete absence of evacuation efforts. Every other species in the galaxy would have been loading civilians onto transport ships and fleeing to neighboring systems. The humans, instead, appeared to be gathering in the areas of highest tactical value, building fortifications around their settlements, and preparing for what could only be described as a last stand. Sir, the destroyer fleet has reached the outer system boundary. They're deploying into standard bombardment formation, Velnash reported. Estimated time to orbital weapons range, 6 hours. Zektar accessed his personal communication array and opened a channel to the Galactic Council's emergency session protocols. What he was witnessing needed to be documented and analyzed by minds greater than his own. But, as he began composing his initial report, movement on the planet's surface caught his attention again. The humans were doing something unprecedented in galactic military history. Instead of positioning their makeshift defenses around strategic installations or population centers, they were spreading them across seemingly random locations. Agricultural fields, mining sites, even areas of purely aesthetic value were being fortified with the same intensity as their cities. Velnash analyzed the human defensive positioning. Apply standard tactical doctrine and identify their strategic objectives. Several minutes passed before his aide responded, and, when she did, her voice carried the confusion that Zektar himself was feeling. High Observer, the positioning makes no sense according to any known military doctrine. They're not protecting critical infrastructure or population centers. They're protecting everything. Every settlement, every farm, every structure they've built on this world. Understanding began to dawn on Zektar with the slow horror of watching a natural disaster unfold. The humans weren't preparing for a military engagement using conventional strategic thinking. They were preparing to defend every single thing they had built on this world, every life they had created here, every dream they had planted in this soil. It was tactically insane and strategically impossible. It was also, Zektar realized with growing fascination and dread, exactly the kind of thinking that might make the difference between survival and extinction when facing impossible odds. The humans weren't planning to win through superior firepower or tactical brilliance. They were planning to win by refusing to lose, by making every meter of ground so costly that victory itself became meaningless. As the destroyer fleet continued its inexorable approach, Zektar found himself witness to the most comprehensive preparation for total war he had ever observed. The humans were transforming their entire world into a weapon, turning every citizen into a soldier, and preparing to fight with a dedication that bordered on the fanatical. The most disturbing realization of all was that they seemed genuinely confident in their ability to prevail. Governor Martinez's words echoed in Zektar's mind as he watched the final preparations unfold across the planet's surface. What exactly had she meant when she said, "This is why you never corner a human"? In 6 hours, when the destroyer fleet reached weapons range, Zektar would discover the answer. And that answer would forever change his understanding of what it truly meant to be human in a galaxy that had never seen their like before. The observation continued, and, with each passing minute, Zektar became more certain that he was about to witness something that would redefine the very nature of warfare itself. The destroyer fleet's lead vessel, a massive dreadnought called the Purification's Edge, established communication protocols as it entered the system's inner boundary. Zektar watched the proceedings through Nexus Station's intercepted transmission array, his analytical mind cataloging every detail of what should have been a routine subjugation operation. Commander Thaklon of the destroyer fleet was of Orth AK, a species known throughout the galaxy for their methodical approach to warfare and their complete lack of emotional attachment to the concept of mercy. His scaled hide gleamed with ceremonial scarring that marked his rise through the destroyer hierarchy, each mark representing a world cleansed of what his people deemed genetic impurity. Attention human settlement, Thaklon's voice carried the mechanical precision that all destroyer communications possessed. You have been selected for purification under Destroyer Fleet Doctrine 7.2, Elimination of Inferior Genetic Lines. You will evacuate all population centers within 4 hours. Any resistance will result in immediate surface bombardment. The response came from Governor Martinez within minutes, and her voice carried the same unsettling calm that had marked her previous transmission. Commander Thaklon, this is Governor Sarah Martinez. We've reviewed Destroyer Fleet Doctrine 7.2, along with your tactical manual and operational procedures. We're familiar with your fleet composition, your standard bombardment patterns, and your historical success rates. We respectfully decline your evacuation order. Through the observation deck's enhanced sensors, Zektar could see Thaklon's reaction aboard his command vessel. The destroyer commander's head crest flared in a display of confusion and irritation. Human Martinez, you appear to misunderstand your situation. We command 47 capital ships and possess the firepower to reduce your planet to constituent atoms. Your colony possesses no military vessels and no orbital defenses. Compliance is not optional. Commander, Martinez replied, and now Zektar detected something new in her voice. Not fear or desperation, but something far more dangerous, anticipation. You appear to misunderstand our situation. We're humans, Commander. We don't evacuate. We don't surrender. And we definitely don't go quietly into the night when someone threatens our home. What happened next would be studied by military academies across the galaxy for centuries to come. Instead of proceeding with standard bombardment protocols, Commander Thaklon made the decision that would transform a routine extermination into the most significant military engagement in recorded history. Human Martinez, your species is unfamiliar to our tactical databases. Explain your statement. Governor Martinez's response was broadcast across every frequency, ensuring that not only the destroyer fleet but also Nexus Station and any other listening post in the system would record her words for posterity. Commander, let me tell you about humans. We're the species that looked at a world covered in poisonous atmosphere and decided to make it breathable. We're the ones who saw vast oceans separating our continents and built machines to fly across them. When our scientists told us that the stars were unreachably far away, we built ships to reach them anyway. She paused, and, through the planet's surface sensors, Zektar could see that the human defensive preparations had reached completion. Every settlement was now surrounded by improvised fortifications. Every approach route was covered by weapons that had been farming equipment mere hours ago. Most significantly, energy readings indicated that the humans had somehow managed to weaponize their planet's industrial infrastructure. But, here's what makes us really special, Commander. We're the species that looks at impossible odds and asks, how do we win, instead of how do we survive? You've brought 47 capital ships to destroy 50,000 farmers. You think that makes this a foregone conclusion? You're about to learn why that kind of thinking will get you killed when you're dealing with humans. The transmission ended, leaving the destroyer fleet to contemplate a response that had never appeared in any of their tactical manuals. Zektar found himself leaning forward in fascination as he watched Commander Thaklon's confusion play out across the command frequencies. All vessel commanders, report to Tactical Frequency 7 for strategic conference, Thaklan ordered, his voice carrying the first hint of uncertainty Zektar had ever heard from a destroyer officer. The strategic conference that followed provided Zektar with unprecedented insight into destroyer fleet operations. Their tactical doctrine was indeed methodical and thorough, based on thousands of years of successful campaigns against dozens of species. But, as the various commanders shared their analysis of the human defensive positions, a pattern emerged that clearly frustrated their conventional military thinking. The humans have positioned defensive installations at every settlement regardless of strategic value, reported Captain Velfak of the destroyer Inevitable Judgment. They're defending agricultural zones with the same intensity as population centers. Confirmed, added Captain Zesik from the heavy cruiser Final Solution. Our bombardment targeting algorithms cannot identify priority targets because the humans have made everything a priority target. Commander Thaklan's response revealed the fundamental flaw in destroyer thinking when applied to human psychology. Irrelevant. We will simply destroy everything. Begin planetary bombardment in T-30 minutes. All surface structures are to be eliminated. But, as the destroyer fleet moved into bombardment formation, the humans revealed the first of many surprises they had prepared. The planet's surface erupted with activity as thousands of concealed launch sites opened simultaneously. What emerged was not the primitive projectile weaponry the destroyers expected, but a coordinated missile barrage that demonstrated both tactical sophistication and complete disregard for conventional force preservation doctrine. The humans were firing everything they had in a single, massive salvo directed not at the destroyer ships themselves, but at the space between the fleet and the planet. Within minutes, the area surrounding Kepler 442d was filled with expanding clouds of metallic chaff, electromagnetic interference generators, and what Zektar's sensors identified as improvised communication jammers. Sir, Velnash reported with barely concealed amazement, the humans have just blinded the destroyer fleet's targeting systems. Their bombardment computers won't be able to achieve precision targeting through that interference field. The tactical brilliance of the human strategy began to reveal itself as the destroyer fleet struggled to adapt to an entirely unexpected opening move. Instead of attempting to protect their installations from bombardment, the humans had made bombardment itself tactically useless. The destroyers could still glass the planet's surface, but they could no longer selectively target military installations while preserving infrastructure for later colonization. Commander Thaklan's rage was evident in his next transmission to the planet's surface. Clever humans. You have forced us to destroy everything rather than allowing selective targeting. You have accomplished nothing except ensuring your own complete annihilation. Governor Martinez's response came through the interference field with crystal clarity, suggesting that the humans had prepared multiple redundant communication systems for exactly this scenario. Commander, you're still not understanding what you're dealing with. You came here to destroy us quickly and, efficiently, then move on to your next target. You plan to spend a few hours here and add another victory to your record. The pause that followed was filled with activity across the planet's surface that made Zektar's analytical mind race with implications. Power signatures indicated that the humans were bringing major industrial systems online, systems that had been shut down during their defensive preparations. But these weren't weapon systems or shield generators. They were manufacturing plants, operating at levels that suggested maximum production capacity. Instead, Martinez continued, you're going to spend months here. Maybe years. Because we're not going to make this easy for you. We're not going to curl up and die when you start shooting. We're going to fight you for every meter of ground, every building, every field of grain we've planted on this world. And, while you're stuck here dealing with us, you're not out there destroying other worlds, other colonies, other species that can't fight back. The full scope of human strategic thinking began to dawn on Zektar as he processed the implications of Governor Martinez's words. The humans weren't planning to win in any conventional sense. They were planning to be so expensive to defeat that the destroyer fleet would lose operational effectiveness even in victory. They were turning themselves into a tactical quagmire that would consume resources and time far out of proportion to their strategic value. Sir, Velnash interrupted his thoughts, we're detecting massive energy buildups across the planet's surface. Whatever they're manufacturing down there, they're doing it faster than anything in our industrial databases. Commander Theklan's next communication carried a tone of grim determination that suggested he was beginning to understand the nature of his opponent. Very well, humans. If you insist on prolonging your extinction, we will accommodate you. All ships, prepare for sustained surface bombardment. We will reduce this world to molten rock if necessary. That's the spirit, Commander, K. Martinez's reply, and now her voice carried something that chilled Zektar to his core. It was satisfaction. The humans were getting exactly the response they wanted from the destroyer fleet. As the first bombardment began, Zektar found himself witnessing the opening moves of a conflict that would redefine everything the galaxy thought it knew about warfare, determination, and the true cost of victory. The humans had just forced one of the galaxy's most efficient military forces into exactly the kind of prolonged engagement that would minimize their operational advantages. And they were just getting started. The first bombardment began at 1447 local time, and Zektar watched in horrified fascination as the destroyer fleet unleashed the kind of firepower that had reduced dozens of worlds to lifeless rock. Plasma lances capable of vaporizing mountain ranges carved brilliant lines across Kepler 442D's atmosphere. Antimatter warheads detonated in sequence, each explosion releasing energy equivalent to multiple stellar cores. Gravitational compression bombs created localized spacetime distortions that should have torn the planet's crust apart. By every calculation in Zektar's extensive tactical database, the surface of Kepler 442d should have been reduced to molten slag within the first hour. The human settlements, with their improvised defenses and converted agricultural equipment, should have been vaporized before they could even register the incoming fire. Instead, something unprecedented was happening. Sir, Velnash reported, her voice tight with confusion, the bombardment is achieving kinetic impact, but tactical damage assessment shows minimal reduction in human defensive capability. Zektar expanded the sensor display to maximum resolution and studied the bombardment's effects. What he saw challenged everything he understood about orbital assault tactics. The destroyer weapons were indeed hitting their targets with devastating force. Entire settlements disappeared in brilliant flashes of superheated plasma. Agricultural fields were transformed into glass craters. The very landscape of the planet was being reshaped by forces that could crack continents. But the humans kept fighting back. How is this possible? Zektar muttered, his forearms working frantically across the analysis interfaces. The answer emerged slowly as he compiled data from hundreds of impact sites across the planet's surface. The humans had built their defenses underground. Not just bunkers or shelters, but entire parallel infrastructure systems that extended kilometers beneath the surface. When the destroyers obliterated a settlement, identical facilities came online from subsurface locations. When they destroyed a weapons installation, 3 more emerged from concealed positions nearby. They've duplicated their entire civilization underground, Velnash breathed, her own analysis reaching the same conclusion. Every settlement, every factory, every strategic installation has multiple backup systems hidden beneath the surface. But, even more disturbing than the extent of the human preparations was the speed with which they had been completed. According to orbital surveys taken just months earlier, these underground installations hadn't existed. The humans had somehow excavated and constructed a parallel civilization in a matter of weeks, using methods that shouldn't have been possible with their technology level. Commander Theklan's frustration was evident in his communications with his fleet commanders. Increase bombardment intensity. Target subsurface geological formations. If they want to hide underground like vermin, we'll crack this planet open and dig them out. What followed was an escalation in destructive force that pushed even destroyer fleet capabilities to their limits. Deep penetration antimatter charges drove shafts of annihilation kilometers into the planet's crust. Tectonic disruptor arrays triggered artificial earthquakes designed to collapse any underground structures. Molten core taps attempted to destabilize the planet's geological foundations. The humans' response was to adapt faster than should have been possible for any organic species. Sir, Velnash interrupted Zektar's analysis with an urgent report, we're detecting new weapons systems coming online across the planet's surface. The humans are launching counterattacks against the destroyer fleet. The display shifted to show streams of projectiles rising from the planet's surface toward the orbiting ships. But these weren't the crude missiles or converted agricultural equipment they had observed earlier. These were sophisticated weapons systems that demonstrated advanced targeting capabilities and tactical coordination. Analyzing projectile composition, Zektar ordered, though he suspected the results would be as disturbing as everything else about human military doctrine. The analysis confirmed his fears. The human counterattacks weren't intended to destroy destroyer ships, which would have been impossible given the technological disparity. Instead, they were precisely calibrated to damage specific ship systems while leaving the vessels themselves intact. Shield generators were targeted with electromagnetic pulse weapons. Sensor arrays were blinded by coordinated laser strikes. Communication systems were jammed by adaptive signal interference. The humans were systematically degrading the destroyer fleet's operational capabilities without attempting the impossible task of actually destroying their ships. They're fighting a war of attrition, Zektar realized with growing admiration and dread. They can't win in direct engagement, so they're making the engagement itself cost more than victory is worth. As the bombardment continued into its second day, patterns began to emerge that revealed the true sophistication of human tactical thinking. Every time the destroyer fleet adapted their bombardment patterns to counter a human defensive strategy, the humans had already prepared counters to the adaptation. When the destroyers switched to seismic attacks, the humans revealed underground facilities built to withstand earthquake conditions. When the fleet attempted to eliminate the planet's atmosphere to suffocate the defenders, the humans demonstrated that their underground cities possessed complete atmospheric recycling systems. Most disturbing of all, the humans appeared to be learning from each bombardment cycle, improving their defenses in real time based on observed destroyer tactics. Velnash analyzed the timeline of human defensive adaptations. Calculate improvement curves and project tactical evolution rates. The results were unprecedented in galactic military history. The humans were demonstrating adaptive learning speeds that exceeded even the most advanced artificial intelligence systems. They weren't just defending against the current bombardment, they were preparing defenses against bombardment patterns the destroyers hadn't even implemented yet. Sir, Velnash reported with barely controlled disbelief, at current improvement rates, human defensive capabilities will exceed destroyer offensive capabilities within 17 days. The implications were staggering. A species that had been classified as Category C, moderate threat, was on track to neutralize one of the galaxy's most feared military forces through sheer adaptive determination. They weren't winning through superior technology or overwhelming force, but through an approach to warfare that prioritized learning and adaptation over conventional tactical doctrine. Commander Thaklan's next communication revealed that the destroyer leadership was beginning to grasp the nature of their situation. All ship commanders report casualty status and operational readiness for extended siege operations. The fleet status reports that followed painted a picture of military efficiency slowly degrading under the pressure of prolonged engagement. Several ships reported critical system failures from accumulated damage caused by human counterattacks. Ammunition reserves were being depleted faster than resupply schedules could accommodate. Most significantly, crew morale was beginning to suffer under the psychological pressure of fighting an enemy that refused to break under overwhelming force. Governor Martinez, Thaklan's voice carried a new tone as he opened communications with the planet's surface. Your resistance is impressive but ultimately futile. We can maintain bombardment indefinitely. Your people will eventually be eliminated regardless of your defensive preparations. Martinez's response came through clearly despite the ongoing bombardment, suggesting that human communication systems had also proven more resilient than expected. Commander, let me share some mathematics with you. We've calculated your fleet's ammunition expenditure rate against our defensive adaptation rate. At current consumption levels, you'll exhaust your ordnance supplies in approximately 43 days. Our defensive capabilities will exceed your offensive capabilities in 17 days. This means you'll spend 26 days shooting at us while we shoot back more effectively than you can shoot at us. The pause that followed was filled with frantic activity aboard the destroyer command vessels as fleet analysts confirmed Martinez's calculations. When Thaklan responded, his voice carried the first hint of uncertainty that Zektar had ever heard from a destroyer commander. Your calculations assume we cannot adapt our own tactics or receive reinforcement supplies. Commander, Martinez replied, and her voice now carried the confidence of someone presenting a carefully prepared strategic analysis. Your tactics are 3,000 years old and haven't changed because they've never needed to change. You've never fought an enemy that treated prolonged siege as a victory condition instead of a defeat condition. As for reinforcements, our intelligence suggests the destroyer fleet operates on tight logistics schedules. The longer you stay here, the more strain you put on supply lines that support multiple simultaneous operations across the galaxy. Zektar found himself recalculating everything he thought he knew about human strategic thinking. They had somehow acquired detailed intelligence on destroyer fleet operations and had incorporated that intelligence into a defensive strategy designed to exploit weaknesses that no other species had even recognized. They weren't just fighting the ships currently bombarding their world, they were fighting the entire destroyer fleet operational structure. As the bombardment entered its third day, human defensive fire was indeed becoming more accurate and more damaging. Destroyer ships that had never been forced to withdraw from a combat zone were beginning to report systems failures that would require major repairs. The fleet's tight formation was loosening as individual commanders attempted to minimize damage to their vessels. Most significantly, the humans had begun broadcasting their tactical successes across all communication frequencies, ensuring that every ship in the system could monitor their progress against the supposedly invincible destroyer fleet. They weren't just defending their world, they were demonstrating to the galaxy that the destroyers could be fought, could be hurt, and could be forced into tactical situations where their overwhelming advantages became liabilities. Sir, Velnash reported as the third day of bombardment concluded, the destroyer fleet has lost operational initiative. They're no longer conducting the engagement according to their tactical preferences. The humans have successfully forced them into a reactive posture. Zektar nodded grimly as he compiled his latest report for the Galactic Council. What he was witnessing represented a fundamental shift in galactic power dynamics. The humans had just demonstrated that superior firepower and technological advantage could be neutralized by superior strategic thinking and absolute determination to pay whatever price victory required. And they were nowhere near finished showing the galaxy what humans could accomplish when truly motivated to fight. On the seventh day of the siege, something changed in the fundamental nature of the conflict. Zektar observed the shift through Nexus Station's sensors as human activity across Kepler 442d took on patterns that defied every military doctrine in his extensive database. Instead of maintaining defensive positions and conserving resources as any rational species would do while under orbital bombardment, the humans were expanding their operations. Sir, Velnash reported with the tone of someone delivering information that contradicted all logical expectations, the humans are building new installations. During active bombardment, they're not just maintaining their defensive capabilities, they're increasing them. The sensor data confirmed what seemed impossible. Across the planet's surface, construction activity had accelerated rather than diminished under the destroyer bombardment. New weapons installations were appearing faster than the orbital strikes could eliminate them. Underground manufacturing facilities were producing defensive systems at rates that exceeded the fleet's ability to destroy them. Most disturbing of all, the humans had begun launching construction missions to areas that were actively under bombardment, building new defensive positions while plasma strikes turned the surrounding landscape to glass. They're treating orbital bombardment as a construction challenge rather than a military threat, Zektar observed with growing fascination and dread. They've weaponized their own industrial capacity. The tactical implications were staggering. Traditional siege doctrine required the attacking force to maintain constant pressure until the defender's resources were exhausted. But the humans had somehow managed to turn the siege itself into a resource generation mechanism, using the time and energy the destroyers spent on bombardment to build new capabilities faster than existing ones could be destroyed. Commander Thaklan's frustration had evolved into something approaching panic as his fleet status reports revealed the true cost of the prolonged engagement. 3 ships had been forced to withdraw for critical repairs. Ammunition reserves across the fleet had been depleted to emergency levels. Most significantly, the psychological impact of fighting an enemy that became stronger under attack was beginning to affect crew performance throughout the fleet. Fleet Admiral Kesvar, this is Commander Thaklan requesting immediate tactical consultation. came the transmission that revealed just how desperate the situation had become. Fleet Admiral Kesvar was the supreme military commander of all destroyer fleet operations, a legend whose tactical brilliance had overseen the elimination of 17 different species across 4 galactic sectors. The Admiral's response came through secured channels that Nexus Station's sophisticated interception arrays could barely decode. Commander Thacklon, explain why a routine purification operation has required a fleet-level strategic consultation. What followed was a detailed briefing that laid out the complete failure of conventional destroyer tactics against human defensive doctrine. As Thacklon described the humans' adaptive capabilities, their underground infrastructure, and their ability to maintain offensive operations during sustained bombardment, Zektar could hear the disbelief in the Fleet Admiral's responses. Commander, you're describing tactical capabilities that exceed our own adaptive doctrine systems. Are you suggesting that this species has achieved tactical superiority over destroyer fleet operations? Sir, I'm suggesting that they've created a new form of warfare that makes our tactical superiority irrelevant. They're not trying to win in any conventional sense. They're trying to make victory so expensive that it becomes indistinguishable from defeat. The fleet conference that followed provided Zektar with unprecedented insight into the highest levels of destroyer military thinking. Admiral Kesvar summoned tactical advisors from across the fleet, each one representing centuries of military experience against dozens of different species. Their analysis of the human defensive strategy revealed a level of sophistication that challenged fundamental assumptions about warfare itself. The humans have achieved tactical recursion, reported Chief Tactical Analyst Vorthan, her voice carrying the academic precision that marked the destroyer fleet's most senior strategic minds. Their defensive systems improve faster than we can destroy them because they've designed improvement into the destruction process itself. Every attack we make provides them with data that makes their next generation of defenses more effective. Explain the mathematics, Admiral Kesvar demanded. Sir, conventional siege doctrine assumes that defensive capabilities degrade over time under sustained attack. The humans have created systems where defensive capabilities improve over time under sustained attack. They're using our own bombardment as a training mechanism for their adaptive response systems. The silence that followed this analysis spoke volumes about the unprecedented nature of the tactical situation. The destroyer fleet, which had perfected warfare against every known species in the galaxy, was facing an opponent that had somehow inverted the basic principles of military conflict. Recommendation, the Admiral asked finally. Sir, conventional tactical doctrine suggests 3 options: escalate to planet-killing weapons, withdraw and return with overwhelming force, or attempt negotiated settlement. Admiral Kesvar's response revealed the depth of destroyer commitment to their military doctrine. Planet-killing weapons would achieve our strategic objective but would consume resources allocated for 6 other purification operations. Withdrawal would represent unprecedented tactical failure and would encourage resistance among other species. Negotiated settlement is prohibited under destroyer fleet doctrine. What the Admiral said next would be remembered as the moment when the galaxy's most feared military force acknowledged that they had encountered something completely outside their operational parameters. Commander Thacklon, you will continue siege operations while I consult with the Fleet Council regarding tactical modifications. This species represents a new classification of military threat that requires doctrine revision. But, while the destroyer leadership struggled to adapt their 3,000-year-old tactical doctrine to account for human psychology, the humans themselves were preparing to demonstrate just how far their strategic thinking extended beyond conventional military parameters. Sir, Velnash interrupted Zektar's analysis of the destroyer communications with urgent alarm in her voice. We're detecting massive energy buildups across the planet's surface. Power generation levels are approaching the theoretical maximums for their industrial infrastructure. The sensor display revealed activity that made Zektar's analytical mind race with implications. Every power generation facility on the planet was operating beyond safe parameters. Manufacturing centers that should have been destroyed days ago were producing at levels that suggested they had somehow increased their capacity during the bombardment. Most significantly, energy was being channeled to projects that the sensors couldn't clearly identify but that appeared to require tremendous power inputs. Governor Martinez's next transmission provided the answer, and, with it, a demonstration of human strategic thinking that would change the course of the conflict forever. Fleet Admiral Kesvar, this is Governor Martinez. We understand you're consulting with your Fleet Council regarding tactical modifications. While you're doing that, we thought you might be interested in our own tactical modifications. The transmission was accompanied by real-time sensor data that showed massive launch events occurring simultaneously across the planet's surface. But these weren't the defensive missiles or improvised weapons that had characterized human resistance up to this point. These were sophisticated spacecraft, built from plans that had somehow been developed, tested, and implemented during the week-long bombardment. Admiral, you've spent 7 days teaching us everything about your ships, your weapons, your tactics, and your operational limitations. We've been very good students. Now we'd like to show you what we've learned. The spacecraft rising from Kepler 442b's surface demonstrated technology that shouldn't have been possible for a species that had achieved faster-than-light travel only 4 decades earlier. Their acceleration curves exceeded anything in the destroyer fleet's performance parameters. Their maneuverability suggested propulsion systems that violated several basic principles of conventional physics. Most disturbing of all, their apparent structural integrity indicated construction techniques that surpassed even destroyer engineering standards. Velnash analyzed those spacecraft, determined technical specifications and tactical capabilities. The analysis took several minutes and produced results that challenged Zektar's understanding of technological development timelines. Sir, those ships appear to incorporate design elements from multiple galactic civilizations, including several that are classified as extinct. The propulsion systems alone represent advances that should require decades of research and development. The truth became clear as more human spacecraft achieved orbit and began coordinating with the planet's surface defenses. The humans hadn't just spent 7 days building underground bunkers and converting farm equipment to weapons. They had somehow compressed centuries of technological development into a single week, using the pressure of the destroyer bombardment to accelerate their advancement beyond anything in recorded galactic history. Governor Martinez, Admiral Kesvar's voice carried the first note of genuine concern that Zektar had ever heard from a destroyer commander. Explain how your species has achieved technological advancement at this rate. Martinez's response revealed the final layer of human strategic thinking that had been hidden beneath their defensive preparations. Admiral, you made a fundamental error in your tactical assessment. You assumed we were defending this planet because it's our home. Actually, we were defending this planet because it's our laboratory. Everything we've built here was designed to advance our technological capabilities under combat conditions. You've just spent a week providing us with the most comprehensive advanced military training program in galactic history. The implications were staggering. The humans hadn't just survived the bombardment, they had used it as an opportunity to develop the technology and tactical skills necessary to fight the destroyer fleet on equal terms. They had turned what should have been their extinction into the foundation for their evolution into a major galactic military power. As the first human warships engaged destroyer vessels in actual ship-to-ship combat, Zektar found himself witnessing the moment when humanity announced its arrival as a force that would reshape the balance of power across the entire galaxy. The space battle that followed would be analyzed by military strategists across the galaxy for generations, not for its scale or destructive power, but for what it revealed about the fundamental nature of human warfare. Zektar watched through Nexus Station's sensors as 47 destroyer capital ships, each one a masterpiece of military engineering refined over millennia, engaged 17 human vessels that had been built in underground factories during a week-long siege. By every rational calculation, the humans should have been obliterated within minutes. Their ships were smaller, their crews were inexperienced in space combat, and they were outnumbered nearly 3-1. What actually happened challenged every assumption about space warfare that had guided galactic military doctrine for thousands of years. The human ships didn't fight like any spacecraft in Zektar's extensive database. Instead of maintaining formation and exchanging long-range fire in the methodical patterns favored by all known spacefaring civilizations, they moved with an unpredictability that suggested their tactical thinking operated on entirely different principles. Sir, Velnash reported with barely controlled amazement, the human vessels are using combat maneuvers that shouldn't be possible given the physics of spaceflight. They're changing direction and acceleration in ways that would kill any known organic crew. The explanation became clear as detailed sensor analysis revealed the true sophistication of human engineering. The spacecraft hadn't just been built during the bombardment, they had been designed specifically to accommodate human physiology under extreme combat conditions. Advanced inertial dampening systems allowed their crews to survive acceleration changes that would liquefy the organs of any other species. Environmental systems maintained perfect atmospheric conditions even when the ships were executing maneuvers that generated gravitational forces exceeding those found on most planets. But, most significantly, the ships themselves appeared to be learning from each engagement, adapting their tactical responses in real time based on observed destroyer capabilities. They've turned their spacecraft into mobile learning systems, Zektar realized with growing awe. Every exchange of fire provides data that improves their performance in the next exchange. Commander Thaklan's tactical reports revealed the growing desperation of the destroyer fleet as they struggled to adapt to an opponent that violated every known principle of space combat doctrine. Human ships that should have been destroyed by direct hits were somehow absorbing damage and continuing to fight. Weapons systems that should have been overwhelmed by destroyer firepower were adapting to become more resistant to the specific types of energy being directed against them. Most disturbing of all, the human crews were demonstrating a level of coordination and tactical flexibility that exceeded even the most advanced artificial intelligence systems used by other galactic civilizations. Fleet Admiral Kesvar, Thaklan's transmission carried the strain of a commander whose tactical worldview was being systematically dismantled. The humans are fighting like they can predict our tactical decisions before we make them. Their response times suggest they're planning countermoves to strategies we haven't even implemented yet. The Admiral's response revealed the depth of the crisis facing the destroyer fleet's entire operational philosophy. Commander, are you suggesting that a species with 4 decades of spaceflight experience has achieved tactical superiority over destroyer fleet doctrine? Sir, I'm suggesting that they've achieved something more dangerous than tactical superiority. They've created a form of warfare where tactical superiority becomes irrelevant because they adapt faster than we can implement advantages. As the space battle continued into its 3rd hour, the truth of Thaklan's assessment became undeniable. Despite suffering casualties and absorbing tremendous damage, the human fleet was becoming more effective with each passing minute. Their initially crude tactical coordination had evolved into sophisticated battle formation management. Their weapons targeting, which had been barely adequate at the beginning of the engagement, was now achieving accuracy rates that exceeded destroyer fleet standards. Governor Martinez's voice cut through the chaos of battle communications with an offer that would have been unthinkable at the beginning of the siege. Fleet Admiral Kesvar, this is Governor Martinez. We'd like to propose a cessation of hostilities and open negotiations for a tactical resolution to this engagement. The silence that followed this transmission was filled with frantic activity aboard the destroyer command vessels as fleet analysts calculated the strategic implications of accepting negotiations with a species they had come to exterminate. When Admiral Kesvar finally responded, his voice carried the weight of a military leader whose certainty about the nature of warfare had been fundamentally challenged. Governor Martinez, the destroyer fleet does not negotiate with species designated for purification. Admiral, Martinez replied, and her voice now carried the confidence of someone whose strategic analysis had proven accurate at every stage of the conflict. The destroyer fleet is about to lose its first engagement in 3,000 years to a species you classified as a minor threat. Your choice isn't whether to negotiate with us. Your choice is whether to negotiate with us now, while you still have a fleet capable of tactical withdrawal, or later, after we've demonstrated that humans can destroy destroyer vessels as efficiently as we can defend against them. What happened next provided unprecedented insight into the psychological pressures facing the galaxy's most feared military commanders. Admiral Kesvar opened a private communication channel with his fleet commanders, and Nexus Station's advanced interception arrays captured every word of the strategic conference that followed. All commanders, assessment of tactical situation and recommendations for strategic response. The reports that followed painted a picture of military confidence systematically eroded by an opponent who refused to conform to any known patterns of behavior. Ship commanders reported crew morale problems as their supposedly invincible vessels sustained damage from inferior technology. Tactical officers described coordination challenges caused by fighting an enemy whose response patterns changed faster than countermeasures could be implemented. Most significantly, several commanders reported that their crews were beginning to question fundamental assumptions about destroyer fleet invincibility that had formed the psychological foundation of their military effectiveness. "Sir," reported Captain Velthok with the reluctant honesty of a professional military officer acknowledging tactical reality, "continuing this engagement risks permanent damage to fleet operational effectiveness. The humans have demonstrated capabilities that require comprehensive tactical doctrine revision. Withdrawal and strategic reassessment may be the only viable option." Admiral Kesvar's response revealed the magnitude of the decision facing the destroyer fleet leadership. "Captain, withdrawal from this engagement would represent the first tactical defeat in destroyer fleet history. The psychological impact on our military effectiveness across all operational sectors would be catastrophic." "Sir," came the response from Chief Tactical Analyst Vorthen, "remaining in this engagement risks total fleet destruction by an opponent that becomes more dangerous with each hour of combat. The psychological impact of that outcome would be even more catastrophic." The debate that followed provided Zektar with a window into the highest levels of galactic military strategic thinking. The destroyer fleet faced a choice between accepting an unprecedented defeat and risking an even more devastating defeat through continued engagement with an opponent that had already proven capable of tactical evolution beyond their ability to counter. Governor Martinez's next transmission provided the resolution to their dilemma and simultaneously announced humanity's emergence as a major galactic power. "Admiral Kesvar, we're transmitting detailed tactical analysis of your fleet's performance during our engagement. This analysis includes comprehensive data on your weapons systems, defensive capabilities, command structure effectiveness, and crew performance under stress. We're also transmitting similar analysis for every destroyer fleet operation in this galactic sector over the past 50 years. The implications of this intelligence demonstration were staggering. The humans had somehow acquired detailed information about classified destroyer operations and had processed that information into tactical intelligence that could be used to counter destroyer effectiveness across the galaxy. Additionally, Admiral, we're broadcasting this analysis to every species in the galactic communication network. Within hours, every civilization that has ever faced destroyer fleet operations will have detailed information about your vulnerabilities, your operational patterns, and your tactical limitations." Admiral Kesvar's response carried the weight of a military leader accepting the end of an era. "Governor Martinez, state your terms for cessation of hostilities." "Simple, Admiral. The destroyer fleet withdraws from this system and removes Kepler 442d from all future purification target lists. In exchange, we limit distribution of our tactical analysis to interested parties rather than broadcasting it across the entire galaxy." The agreement that followed marked the end of 3,000 years of unchallenged destroyer fleet dominance and the beginning of a new era in galactic military balance. As Zektar watched the massive warships that had terrorized dozens of civilizations withdraw from human space, he found himself compiling a report that would fundamentally change how the Galactic Council assessed military threats and strategic capabilities. The humans had accomplished something that no other species in recorded galactic history had achieved. They had forced one of the galaxy's most powerful military forces to accept terms through sheer determination, adaptive capability, and absolute refusal to surrender regardless of the odds they faced. But, as the destroyer fleet departed and human ships began patrolling the outer system, Zektar realized that he had witnessed something even more significant than a military victory. He had observed the emergence of a species whose approach to warfare would change the fundamental nature of galactic conflict forever. Governor Martinez's final transmission to Nexus Station confirmed his assessment. "High Observer Zektar, please include this message in your report to the Galactic Council: humans don't fight wars to win. We fight wars to survive. And we're very, very good at surviving." The galaxy now has 46 years of evidence supporting that conclusion. As Nexus Station prepared to depart the Kepler 442 system, Zektar found himself facing the task of explaining to the Galactic Council why everything they thought they knew about military power, tactical doctrine, and the nature of warfare itself had just been proven wrong by a species of farmers who refused to run away from a fight. The humans had earned their place among the galaxy's major powers not through conquest or technological supremacy, but through the simple, terrifying demonstration that they were willing to pay any price and adapt to any challenge rather than accept defeat. And, across the galaxy, civilizations that had cowered before the destroyer fleet for millennia began to whisper a new question in 100 different languages: if humans can fight the destroyers to a standstill, what else might be possible? The answer to that question would reshape the balance of power across the stars.